The new CBA didn't just add rules, it added leverage. Two hard lines now sit above the luxury tax, and they're already deciding what teams can do this summer, sometimes more than the players themselves. Fans are out here adding up talent, front offices are staring at spreadsheets. Stack enough stars and you used to win. That's not automatic anymore. Now it comes down to how a team manages every single dollar against those apron lines. So here's what we're doing. We're going team by team through the East, looking at who got bigger, who got smaller, and the moves each front office had to make just to stay under the wire. Boston traded away its best scorer this summer, and the front office is calling that addition by subtraction. Start with what's gone. The biggest loss is Jaylen Brown, dealt to Philadelphia. Look at his production last year, 28.7 points a game. That's not a role player leaving, that's the number an offense gets built around. Boston also lost Nikola Vucevic, who walked to Orlando. He's 35 now, but he was still the anchor of that front line. And Delano Banton is off the roster too. Between Brown and Vucevic alone, Boston lost its top scorer and its interior stabilizer in the same summer. Now here's who came in. The headline addition is Paul George, 36, acquired straight from Philadelphia. He only played 37 games last season. Durability's the concern here, not talent. When he was healthy, the efficiency held up. 17.3 points a game, and he shot almost 39% from three. Boston didn't stop there. They brought in Mike Conley to run the point, 38 years old, a steady veteran out of Minnesota. Up front, Mitchell Robinson joins from New York, a real rebounder, averaging 8.8 boards a game last season. Two rookies round out the frontcourt mix. Chris Senac Jr., 19, and Dylan Mitchell, 22. Both forwards, both brought in for size Boston didn't have. So the trade line reads, simple enough. A superstar in his prime, out, for a proven veteran, size, and cheap youth, in. What that actually does to Boston's half-court offense won't show up until the ball's in the air. But the salary math behind this reshuffle tells its own story first. Boston's front office pulled off something that doesn't happen by accident. You can gut a roster and still land under the luxury tax. Start with the number. After all that roster turnover, Boston's payroll lands right around $201 million, just a hair over the luxury tax line at $200.4 million. They're in tax territory this year, but there's still several $1,000,000 of cushion before the first apron kicks in at $209 million. Staying this side of that line matters, because it keeps their roster tools intact heading into next summer. Now look at what that number is actually built on. Last season, Boston's roster was lopsided. 9 guards, only 3 forwards. That's not a real NBA rotation, that's a backcourt with some frontcourt attached. This offseason fixed it. Guards down to 7, forwards doubled, up to 6. Add 3 centers, and you get 14 players. A normal, balanced roster instead of a guard-heavy mess. Here's how they paid for it. 2 contracts eat more than half the cap by themselves. Jason Tatum at $58.5 million, Paul George at $54 million. Those 2 alone account for the bulk of the spending. Behind them, Derek White at $30.3 million, and Mitchell Robinson coming in at $15. Everyone below that line is on a bargain. Sam Hauser is the highest paid of the rest at $10.8 million. Below him, Mike Conley at the minimum, then Hugo Gonzalez, Baylor Shireman, and rookie Dylan Mitchell, all on rookie scale or minimum deals. So the model is simple. 2 max-level stars carry the cap sheet. Everyone else fills a role for next to nothing. Whether that formula holds up through an 82-game season is a different question. But on paper, Boston solved its positional imbalance and stayed out of the tax doing it. Brooklyn finished last season 20-62, near the bottom of the East. This offseason wasn't a patch job. It was a full teardown of the roster's identity. Start with what's gone. Nick Claxton is now in Chicago. He was the engine of that defense. 11.7 points a game, 6.9 rebounds, and he was running real offense out of the center spot, 3.7 assists a night. That kind of playmaking from a 5 is rare. Alongside him, Brooklyn lost actual depth. Ziaire Williams was averaging 10.2 points, Ochai Agbaji added 5.1, and Malachi Smith was shooting 43.5% from 3. 3 role players and the starting center, out the door in one summer. Now here's what they added. The headline addition is Julius Randle, in from Minnesota at 31 years old. Look at the numbers. 21.1 points, 6.7 rebounds, 5 assists a night. That's production across the board, not just scoring. Randle takes over the front court role Claxton used to fill. Except this version comes with a scorer's instincts instead of a facilitator's. Brooklyn also brought in Keon Ellis out of Sacramento, 26 years old, a legitimate perimeter defender averaging 1.2 steals a game. That's exactly the kind of stopper this roster was missing on the wing. 3 rookies round things out. Michael Brown Jr., 20, brought in to run the point. Joshua Jefferson, 22, and Tyler Bilodeau. All 3 are projects, not immediate answers. So the trade line reads like this: a defensive anchor out, a high-usage scorer in, 1 proven wing defender added, and draft assets stacked on top for later. What that puzzle actually does to Brooklyn's cap sheet comes next. This front office didn't just clear the decks, they built themselves a trapdoor. Brooklyn's payroll settles at $152.4 million after this rebuild. That's almost $50 million below the luxury tax line, which sits at $200.4 million. This team has more breathing room than almost anyone in the league. 2 players carry that lightweight cap sheet. Michael Porter Jr. sits at the top, $40.8 million. Julius Randle comes in right behind him at $33.3 million. Between those 2 scorers alone, that's roughly half the entire payroll. But all that offensive investment leaves a hole somewhere else. Look at the center position. It's basically empty. Claxton's gone, and the only true center left is Day'Ron Sharpe at $10 million. Danny Wolf and Noah Clowney can slide up as small ball 5s, but against the East's bigger frontcourts, that's a real risk. The backcourt tells a different story. Outside of Terrence Mann at $15.5 million and Keon Ellis at $9 million, everyone else is on the cheap. Igor Demon, Nolan Traore, rookie Michael Brown Jr., all on rookie-scale money. And here's the catch. Brooklyn currently has 16 players under standard contract. The roster limit is 15. Before the season starts, somebody's getting cut or traded, full stop. There's no room to add a name without subtracting one first. That $50 million of cap space isn't sitting there by accident. It's a hedge both ways. If Brooklyn finds itself in the mix, that space turns into trade currency. If the season falls apart instead, that same space lets them absorb somebody else's bad contract in exchange for a future first-round pick. A payroll built for 2 completely different outcomes. That's the real story behind Brooklyn's $152 million number. Under Mike Brown, New York built the league's best 3-point defense and one of its most disciplined interior units. This offseason made one very specific swap to that formula. The biggest change is Mitchell Robinson, gone to Boston. Look at what he did on the defensive end last year. 8.8 rebounds a game, 1.2 blocks. That's real rim protection, and losing it pulls New York's interior defense back toward league average. It gets worse. Ariel Hukporti, the 24-year-old backup center, is out too. That's the entire depth chart behind the paint, thinned out at once. To fill that gap, the front office turned to Andre Drummond, 32 years old. He averaged 8.4 rebounds last season. That keeps New York's rebounding numbers respectable, roughly in line with league average. But rebounding isn't the concern here. Robinson was pushing New York's shot blocking and points allowed in the paint into elite territory, top-tier stuff. Whether Drummond can hold that same level is genuinely unclear. New York trades some defensive sharpness for raw rebounding volume, and that's a real downgrade at the margins. Rookies Jack Cahill and Tyler Nickel add depth here too, but they're not answers for this season. Swapping out one of the league's better rim protectors for veteran rebounding volume, that decision traces straight back to what's happening on New York's cap sheet. New York's cap sheet is running out of room, and it's running out fast. Right now, the payroll sits at $221.3 million. The second apron hits at $221.6 million. That's a gap of just $300,000, practically nothing at this level of spending. 4 contracts are doing almost all of that work. Karl Anthony Towns leads the group at $57 million. Add OG Anunoby, Jalen Brunson, and Mikal Bridges, and those 4 players alone eat almost the entire cap sheet. There's no real flexibility left once you account for them. Here's where it gets tight. New York currently has 13 players on standard contracts. The league requires 14 by opening night. Add 1 more player, even at the minimum, and this team crosses into the second apron. Once that happens, draft pick trading and roster flexibility both freeze up for multiple seasons. That's the real reason behind swapping Robinson for Drummond. Robinson was making $15 million. Drummond comes in at $3.9. That's an $11 million gap, and it's not a basketball decision, it's a cap decision. Without that move, New York blows through the second apron by a wide margin. There's only one real path to add that 14th player without crossing the line. Look at the backcourt. 8 players are stacked at the guard spot. That's not roster depth, that's a logjam. Somebody like Jose Alvarado or Jordan Clarkson likely gets moved before the season starts, and New York probably won't get real salary back in return. 4 max-level contracts pushing right up against a hard financial wall, and a backcourt that's overstuffed on top of it. Getting back to a title, this time it comes down to front office math, as much as anything that happens on the floor. Last season, Philadelphia's offense had a real problem. Whenever their best players sat, the team functionally had 3 guys on the floor who could actually create offense. This offseason, they didn't patch that hole, they rebuilt the whole roster around fixing it. The headline move is Paul George, gone to Boston. He was 36, owed $54 million, and played just 37 games last season. That's a max contract with real durability questions attached to it. Philadelphia also moved off Kelly Oubre Jr., Quentin Grimes, and Andre Drummond, 3 players who covered different roles on last year's roster. That's not a tweak. That's tearing the whole structure down. But this wasn't demolition for its own sake. It set up the next move. The real headline is Jaylen Brown, acquired in what amounts to a straight swap for George. Look at what he did last season. 28.7 points, 6.9 rebounds, 5.1 assists. He's an all-star wing in his prime, and adding that kind of scoring instantly pushes an offense that was near the bottom of the league into legitimate top-tier territory. The backcourt got addressed too. Tyrese Maxey was carrying too much creation load by himself last year, so the front office went out and added shooting and shot creation around him. And Fernie Simons joins as a legitimate shooter, 14.3 points a game, 38.5% from 3. Caleb Love adds more depth behind him. Up front, Ariel Hukporti brings size, and Dean Wade stretches the floor from the 4. Add rookie wing LeBaron Philon into that mix, and Philadelphia's frontcourt rotation looks a lot deeper than it did a year ago. Philadelphia solved its 3-man offense problem by landing Jaylen Brown. What makes this roster overhaul work is how tightly the front office managed the cap sheet around it. This season's payroll lands somewhere around $205 million. That's over the luxury tax line, but it keeps them a few million short of the first apron at $209 million, the point where a hard cap kicks in and locks the roster in place. Getting a core this expensive that close to the line took real discipline. Every mid-tier salary that didn't need to be there got moved out. But there's a catch hiding underneath that clean cap sheet. Right now, Philadelphia is carrying more players under guaranteed money than the 15-man roster limit allows. However tight and well-built this roster looks on paper, there's no room left to add anyone. Before the season starts, at least a couple of these contracts have to go traded or waived outright, eating the dead money. Sitting this close to the first apron turns it into a real ceiling. Even after trimming the roster, adding one more veteran at the minimum is enough to wipe out what's left. There's one piece of good news here. Adam Bona, 23, took a real step forward last season. On the team's internal rating scale, he grades out at 731. That gives Philadelphia a cushion at center, enough to soften the loss of Drummond's rebounding. A near-elite roster on paper, squeezed against a hard cap with barely any room left to breathe. That's the trade-off Philadelphia made this summer. Whether that roster math holds up through 82 games is the real question hanging over their shot at getting back to the top of the East. Toronto built one of the best passing offenses in the league, number 2 by the numbers, with disciplined, low-risk basketball. What they didn't have was a closer, someone who could just take over a possession on his own. This offseason, that whole equation got shaken up. The confirmed loss here is Sandro Mamukelashvili, gone in free agency. He was the engine of Toronto's second unit, spacing the floor, stretching defenses out from the paint to the arc, shooting almost 39% from 3 last season. Losing him pulls that offense back inward. Jonathan Mogbo is gone too. To replace that production, the front office brought in Kyle Anderson, 32 years old. Look at his numbers: 6.2 points, 3.5 rebounds, 2.9 assists last season. That passing IQ fits perfectly into Toronto's .5 system. But here's the catch. He's not a scorer. He doesn't solve Toronto's biggest weakness, which is finishing possessions when the offense breaks down. Rookie Elijah Graves adds some upside, but that's it for reinforcements. Based on those moves alone, you'd conclude Toronto doubled down on ball movement and left the scoring problem alone. Then a trade broke that just about resets the entire conversation. Brandon Ingram heading out, Kawhi Leonard coming back to Toronto, a deal that's currently on hold. If it goes through, Leonard gives Toronto exactly what its offense has been missing. A player who can get his own shot when the play breaks down, no system required. Having that option at the end of a possession changes everything. It raises the ceiling on an offense that's been stuck in the middle of the pack and pushes their scoring numbers into legitimate top-tier range. The trade hasn't closed yet, which leaves this roster in limbo. Toronto's stuck between 2 versions of itself, the one with Ingram and the one that gets Leonard back. And underneath all that, there's a cap situation that's just as tight. The current roster sits at $200 million in payroll. The luxury tax line is $200.4 million. That's a gap of roughly $400,000, about as thin as it gets at this level of spending. 4 contracts are driving that number. Scottie Barnes leads the group at $41.8 million. Behind him, Brandon Ingram at $40 million, Emmanuel Quickley at $32.5 million, and RJ Barrett at $29.6 million. Those 4 alone account for most of the payroll. Letting Mamukelashvili walk and replacing him with Anderson's cheaper deal wasn't just a basketball call. It's part of what kept Toronto under that tax line at all. But there's a complication hiding behind that clean number. Toronto currently has 16 players under guaranteed contract. The roster limit is 15. So even while they're squeezed right up against the tax line, they still have to cut at least 1 player before the season starts. And whoever goes, Toronto isn't getting anything back for that salary. Then there's the trade itself, still unresolved. If Ingram's $40 million comes off the books and Leonard's contract replaces it, this entire cap picture changes. That tight gap under the tax line stops meaning anything. How Toronto trims this roster down and whether they stay under the tax at all, that's still an open question hanging over the front office. Step back, and the pattern across the East is the same everywhere you look. This isn't about stacking talent anymore. Under the new CBA, the apron lines dictate almost everything a front office can do, and every top team in the East spent this summer solving that problem instead of just adding names to a roster. Boston traded away its best scorer to fix a roster that had 9 guards and 3 forwards a year ago. They landed at 14 players, payroll just over the tax line. Tight, but clean. Philadelphia went the other direction, taking on Jaylen Brown and fixing their 3-man offense problem outright. That put them somewhere around $205 million in payroll, pressed right up against the first apron, with more players under contract than the roster technically allows. New York gave up its best rim protector just to stay $300,000 under the second apron. 1 more contract addition, and their whole future locks up. Toronto is squeezed even tighter, sitting about $400,000 under the tax line, still without a real answer for who closes games late. Brooklyn sits apart from all of it. $50 million of space below the tax line, positioned to either chase a trade or absorb someone else's bad contract for draft capital. Every team except Brooklyn is working with almost no margin for error heading into training camp. And none of these numbers account for the one trade that could blow the whole picture up. Kawhi Leonard to Toronto, still on hold, pending the league's investigation into the Clippers. If that deal closes, Ingram's $40 million comes off Toronto's books, Leonard's takes its place, and every cap calculation across the conference gets rewritten. Roster construction in this league isn't about collecting stars anymore, it's about fitting them under a number that keeps shrinking every year. So under these new apron rules, which front office do you think is making the smartest moves and who is playing the most dangerous gamble? Also, how do you think this massive, suspended Kawhi Leonard trade will ultimately play out? Let me know your sharpest analysis and opinions down in the comment section. That's going to do it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.